Hello, and welcome to the 7th episode of 3D Studio Max tutorials. In this episode, we're going to be looking at texture modeling, or just textures and uh, adding them, adding them in materials to objects. So, one of the really good things that 3ds is really good at is making materials and textures and that kind of thing. And they're really good at uh, adding a lot of detail to things. Because obviously, this square here, having this uh, simple one tone color isn't exactly realistic. And if you're making a architectural design for or model for a company, you want to make sure that everything you have has proper textures and the material, like the reflectivity of the materials is correct and the transparency, and you have all the nice little details and stuff in there. Um, I keep saying texture, but that's not quite the same thing. Um, anyway, so to get to the texture menu, we just go ahead and hit M, which is just the quick menu, a quick hotkey for to get this material editor, and or you can just hit up here to get that. Um, so there's a few different sections here. There's this side here, which is the material map browser, which just has all the basic materials here, as well as maps, which are going to be used more so for textures. Here is the view area where when you place you can just click and drag a material here, and there's also, if you have multiple, you can multiple like maps and stuff. You can link them to materials to add uh, different properties to them. And then over here, if you uh, click on this, double click up here, you can see all of the different options and parameters that you can edit. Um, so yeah. Okay. One sec. So right now we're going to be working with physical material right here. There are obviously other options that have their own unique parameters and differences, but for most things, you're going to be using physical material because it has a lot of options that will help make it better represent um, physical materials. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have this here, and we want to have this be selected to this selection. So over here, if we um, click on this, and then over here we right click, we can hit assign material to selection, and as you can see, this is now selected, and it changes the color. So if we want to do something simple, like just changing this from a grayish color to, let's say, blue, we just go over here and hit base color, and then we can just use a slider over here, make it a nice blue. Hit OK. Now you see over here, there's this sort of glow, um, and that's because the reflection right now is it's completely reflective. But if we add some roughness to it, you can see over here it kind of changes a little bit. Not too much though. Now what's really going to change what this looks like is this IQR or IOR modifier here. If we go ahead and set this to 1, you can see that a lot of that glowiness kind of goes away, and you can't really see it too much here. That's because we don't have any sort of lighting built into the scene at the moment. But it does make a difference. So let's just put that to let's say like 1.3. Well, maybe not 1.3. Maybe like 1.1. Yeah, that's fine. And yeah, there's roughness over here. If you ever have a question, you just sort of hover over it, and it'll give you a little message on what each of the things means. Some of this stuff is pretty simple. Transparency, you can make it more transparent, which this is reflected over here. It can be used for a few different things. You can also change what the color of the transparency looks like. There's also all these other different settings here. And over here we have maps, which maps are, again, we have these here. That's basically how, if you want to change certain aspects of it, you can apply maps to this material and add certain textures. So you pull up a image of bricks. You can insert it as a bitmap and then apply it to, say, the color, and it'll change this from a blue to a brick tiling. Um, so that's pretty useful. And there's a few other things you can do here with that. Oh, it's very important that when you're doing something like this, you go ahead and change the name. So I'm going to call this box 1. But it's really important to make sure you name everything. You can also do change names over here in the layers. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but again, it's a very important thing to do. Just make sure everything's nice and neat. Whoopsies. You can also click here and change some of these are some preset ones. So let's say we want matte paint. You can kind of see it changes it to matte. It changes some of the settings here, keeps the color, but more or less. But yeah, so let's and we can kind of see how these change for different types of materials. So matte isn't going to be as reflective as, say, silver. So you can see some of these things change, and their properties change. And again, you can't really see it too much here since we don't have any sort of lighting in the scene, but it would be a better reflected with that. Let's see. Is there this is really just the basics and what all this UI stuff means. If you're just making simple colors and materials like this, it's material editor is really simple, and this is one of the strong points of 3ds Max, that it's really easy to make materials and edit them and apply them much easier than some of the other programs. One second. Oh, also, if you ever really want to see the material better, it's usually a good idea to render it. So we go ahead and go to render. And then I go ahead and hit render. Huh. One second. Sorry about that. I forgot that we didn't have any sort of lights going on in the scene here. So I added some lights here, which it's really simple to do. Just go ahead and hit create, then lights, and then standard lights. These are target lights. You can also add different kinds of lights if you want. This is just because during the rendering, since it takes light into account, without light you can see it's just a sort of black mass, but with light you can kind of see the silver. And if we go ahead and go back to the material editor and change this from silver to, let's say, matte paint, and then come back here and go to the rendering, you can see it's a bit different. I don't think that, well, no, it did. Yeah, so it's just a bit different. This one's a bit more reflective, I suppose. Anyway, yeah, so that's some of the basics of materials and what they'll look like, and sort of how to do some of this stuff. Rendering's not looking too good. I'll see what I can do about that for the next video. Until then, so long.